Matt Campbell storming to the front of this one with several cars taking to the inside of the centre chicane.
Yeah, opposite scenario to what we saw from race one, where all the pro guys started this one, and it was a cracking battle at the front, and this was the move Chris Mees put on Paul Stokel for second position. Once he was released from behind the KFC entry, he was eyes forward trying to chase down Matty Campbell, who had opened up a big gap. Renee Gracie having a run in the current spec Audi GT3. She did a ripper job yesterday and has done all weekend, to be honest, in that very, very fast Audi GT3.
Second in the AM class, so well done yesterday. This was the pit stop cycle that saw the Audi go to the lead with a shorter pit stop time, putting Liam Talbot back into the lead, not only of the race, but of the series, and just has to finish ahead of the field today to be champion of this year's series. It was another race-long battle between the Audi and the Porsche, and in the end, it was Liam Talbot and Christopher Mees by just 0.4 of a second, as Talbot celebrated maybe a little bit earlier there as the Porsche almost snuck down the inside, and Talbot collecting another victory in this year's Fanatec GT World Challenge. Australia powered by AWS, one race to come this morning.
They're such cool looking cars, Knowles. You know, for me, I love all the little aero features. I love the winglets. I love that the Porsche looks very different to the Audi. They produce their aero platform differently as well. One's very much visually on the outside of the car. This one here, we can see it. Huge big wing, all those winglets. The front splitter hangs a long way forward. Look at that, the Porsche beside him on the left-hand side of the shot there. The floor on that car is very flat, very different looking, but they produce lap times that are very equal, and that is all done by balance of performance within this category, and it's adjusted as the weekend goes on. And so, little byproduct of that, we see that Porsche of Matt Campbell and Yasser Shahin, they will do a compulsory pit stop time today of 94 seconds. Liam Talbot, Christopher Mees will be 97 seconds. And the shorter of the top three runners in the championship here will be the Jeff Emery Max Hoffa car at 91 seconds. So we'll cover that later in the race, but the field sets off at the moment for their warm-up lap. GT rolling start, something very different to every other category running here this weekend.
And a three-race format for the first time this year. Normally they're 2 1-hour races. We still get the 2 hours, but spread over 3 races, of which the timer has started counting down. A pit stop window will open inside the first 15 minutes of the race. As AJ pointed out, there's some additional times depending on where you finished in your respective classes. An 87-second mandatory pit stop time, and that's from the moment you come into pit lane. There's a loop at the top and a loop at the bottom of pit lane. You've got to measure that to perfection. We saw one car yesterday miss it by 1 second with massive consequences.
Yeah, that was young Marcus Flack as he returns from open wheel racing in Europe. There he is there in the 78 entry. Jumps and puts a roof over the top of his head for a very first run in Fanatec GT World Challenge Australia here this weekend in Adelaide. So that was a small mistake by him. Yep, he will be pushing the envelope. That's how he'll be wide. All these young guys are, but when you cut it that fine and you risk that 1 second margin by coming back through the pit lane, it has huge consequences. So he will have learned his lesson from that, and I imagine this weekend is a prelude to possibly seeing Marcus full-time in this category in 2024.
And that'd be great to see. There's more cars coming online. Of course, it starts with the Bathurst 12 hour. That really kickstarts the GT Championship for the season next year, part of Bathurst Superfest. That's looking down to turn 8. What a fantastic but scary corner. You know it very well.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I mean,
it's
funny
scary
that
to me.
You call it scary, right? I think it's one of those ones that it lights you up from within the driver's seat.
The M-Class drivers starting in this one. Talbot and Shahin on the front row. Emery and Mike Bailey, they've had a great weekend out, both he and Brett Hobson. Mike Sheargold outside the top 10. Tom McLennan and Paul Lucchini, who's in the GT Trophy class. Back to Hargraves, John Goodacre, Axel Donaldson, who's in the field, and back to Jeff Taunton. So rolling start and championship on the line here. The guy in the white and green, Shannon's Insurance Audi, staring down the barrel of the Fanatec GT World Challenge title for 2023. But racing now on the streets of Adelaide for the final time. Already some movers. We're 4 wide in the mid-pack. Someone had to give. Brad Schumacher was so lucky not to be turned around, and so too was Shahin. He was sideways to the chicane.
Yeah, and he wasn't the only one. We're seeing a lot of that this morning from S5000. So interesting that GT cars are doing exactly the same thing. 4 wide, and we'll always hold our breath on that run to turn 1 because it does funnel down into there. You've got to give each other room. I saw Marcus Flack as well midway through the field. He got a ripper start and made up a couple of spots, but fingers crossed here, Nolts, we're all going to make it through this opening section of corners without an incident.
No lead-in time on that main stretch. They were 4 wide, heading down to the Balo Bridge. As into the sweeper, Talbot and Shaheen, as it's been all weekend long, and the Porsche looks hungry. I think there's a bit of a bump there as the Porsche dives down the inside. He's coming in sharp, he might undo it.
That was deep from Shaheen there, and we saw it yesterday where that Porsche is really strong into the braking area at turn 9, and that just set the tone massively from Shaheen. Opening lap, deep on the brakes, got the job done. He ran past the apex, but he was able to get the inside run on the approach up to the next left-hander. So that's really good driving from Shaheen. To be honest, Nolts, though, Talbot, he's the one with all the lead here at the minute. He needs to make sure that he finishes this race here, and Yasser will know that. So Shaheen was a little bit, looked like he was, you know, just a little giving space, let's call it, and he didn't defend as hard as he possibly could have. But how's the gap that Shaheen has pulled over Talbot at the moment?
That was huge on the way down to turn number 9. So Shaheen's the lead. Gracie on the inside here at turn 4 as Mark Sini loses 2 for the price of 1 there in the Hallmark Audi. So Gracie having her best weekend of the year in the Audi. Steps up from the trophy class after winning that this year. Schumacher to the inside. So Sini has lost 3 spots in a matter of a sector. Yellow flags up here. It's Mike Bailey. And, oh, that was so close. So close for Sini. He was in trouble on Thursday during the wet practice sessions. And now a bit of a log jam here at Hutt Street onto Bartels Road. So the great work for Bailey drops him outside the top 10.
Yeah, and was that McLennan? It looked like it was up the inside of Sini, and I could see that there was yellow white flags up ahead on the run out of Hutt Street. So an awkward moment, but it looks like everybody's been able to get through there without making contact. So was that Bailey, did you say, that was the one that was around? Yeah, it did a really good job, because when you're on the outside like that, you're in a compromised position, but as soon as you move the car, then you become a moving target, and the whole field here has done a terrific job to not make that incident any worse than it already was. So here is Bailey, back up and going, has found reverse, got out of that situation, and now just really needs to get into a flow and a bit of rhythm.
And calm the heart rate down. Here's a replay of the start. Now watch mid-pack.
Mid-pack's where all the action was, wasn't it?
Watch them stretch out to 3 and 4 wide. McLennan in the Porsche. Watch this as the Ram Motorsport Mercedes-Benz rub panels with the Audi. And I love the confidence of Shaheen down here. Those tyres would be right up to temp on the dirtier side, and just park the EMA Porsche taking the lead down there at turn 9.
And he's got braking confidence in that car. This is a replay of what happened to Donaldson. So that was all on his own. Sorry, Bailey. That's what happened to Bailey. It was all on his own. Just cracked the throttle a bit too early at the apex. The rear of the car stepped out. There it is. Or was there some help from Stupas? Was he close enough? Anyway, we couldn't see that clear enough. And then this was the moment I was talking about. Sini was on the outside, but unfortunately that started back at like turn 3 for Sini. So
absolutely,
that wasn't a pass under yellows. This one here, Marcus Flack though, up the inside of the Audi GT3. So he's making lots of speed happen within that older Porsche. And he's driving away from Stupas in the 23 KFC entry. Brad Schumacher, who I think you mentioned, Nolts, has already wrapped up the AM title. He's got plenty of speed in the Fuchs entry. So this is a battle between the 2 fast food giants here. There's a McDonald's logo blazing on the back of the Schumacher entry, and he's trying to get ahead of the KFC entry. You're excited in your seat. I'm a fried chicken man. You don't mind a burger.
I don't mind either, to be honest. Stupas behind the wheel of the KFC Audi for now. We've handed the seat over to Paul Stokel, who put the car on the front row for race 2 yesterday. And Brad Schumacher.
Oh, Schumacher with a little bit of a mistake there. Yeah, just got a little bit caught out by Stupas, was my read there. Stupas on the brake pedal. Didn't look like that was the point on the circuit that Schumacher would have normally applied the brake, and had to steer the car a little bit to the left before he would turn right and come down this fast back straight.
Schumacher just got that curb on the inside through turn 8. And we know what the consequences can be like if you take liberties on that corner, and there's a nice little concrete wall on the left-hand side. He doesn't need to push here. I think he just wants to confirm that he will be the series. We're going to say champion-elect right now. He's in the box seat. Stupas and Stokel have been such a good combination this year. It's been between these two Audis in the AM class. Just sniffing behind is James Konduras in the Superbarn Farmers Market entry, and yeah, just pulling the Fuchs Audi up in time down there at turn 7. The second little incident down there in the first 8 minutes of racing.
And you just made that point there that he doesn't have to push, but he can, so why not? And that's the default position for Brad Schumacher in this AM category. He's super fast in that car. He looks really comfortable. He's wrapped up the championship, so why not fight? You know, he's not out there to be just rolling around at 90%. You want to be out there driving the car, maximising what you've got underneath you. And this time, he wasn't wrong-footed out of turn 6 there and run out of turn 7 there. So this time he'll have an opportunity to try and get the job done down at turn 9 in the braking zone. Two very evenly matched cars, but there we go. That's the confidence levels from Schumacher through turn 8. Carried more mid-corner speed than Stupas in the KFC entry, and he's up the inside. Clean move, textbook move, got the job done, and I suspect now he will be able to use all of the corner speed out of that Fuchs entry that has provided him the opportunity to wrap up this championship.
So as it stands, with Shaheen going to the lead, Talbot has got a 23-point margin back to Jeff Emery. Shaheen is now only 4 points behind Emery, so Jeff runs back in 3rd position right now and could just stay there to secure 2nd position. But if he starts to drop down, Shaheen could finish 2nd in this year's series. Remember, he is the reigning Fanatec GT World Challenge champ.
And as soon as you get too defensive in a race like this, Knowles, particularly knowing that you're the AM, there's a pro guy hopping in, there's a whole heap of variables that'll come into play here. If you're on the defense and you're a little bit too conservative, sometimes that's when you get into trouble. You know, you've got to back yourself in a field like this, and when you're in a car like Jeff is, and he's trying to finish 2nd in the championship, follow the path that you've had all year. You know, if your default position is to drive the car to a certain race level, then keep doing exactly what you've done, and it'll serve you well. Otherwise, if you are too conservative, you end up in these types of battles, and then you're out of sync, and that's when he's going to get into trouble.
And when mistakes start happening.
Correct.
Complacency, you don't want that. Just drive like it's another race out there. So a little pack here coming down through turn number 8. Well, Liam Talbot's about to set the 2nd fastest lap of the race already. Jeff Emery runs 3rd. Renee Gracie still runs in 4th position and leads the AM class today. Ahead of Flack, Schumacher, Stupas, as the pro drivers get suited up down in BP Ultimate Pit Lane. This is Stupas down at the bottom. Oh, the Mercedes-Benz behind of James Konduras. The brothers have been doing this gig for a long time, and quick pinch to the brake there and scarring that Pirelli tyre. They hold on to 8th position with McLennan, and Mike Sheargold now completes your top 10 with a pit stop window not too far away from opening in the 3rd and final race of the weekend and of the year in the Fanatec GT World Challenge.
So we just saw a shot there before that sequence of replays of Maxi Hoffa with his helmet on, suggesting that he won't be too far away from jumping in the 75 entry that he shares with Jeff Emery. I'm curious to know whether he has to do the limbo to get under some of those pit booms out there. He's a tall lad.
Very tall.
He's about 8.5 feet tall, isn't he? With his helmet on, he must be cracking nearly 9. 9 feet, that is.
Walked into the garage at Phillip Island, almost hit his head on the roller door coming in. But how are you going to fit into this car?
Shoehorns himself in there. I've used this before, the analogy of a half-open pocket knife, so I imagine he is exactly that, Maxi Hoffa. There he is.
There's my point. Look at the garage, the door behind him.
He's a very, very tall lad. But one thing's for sure, once he straps himself into an Audi GT3 car, the height is of no disadvantage, and he absolutely drives the wheels off that thing.
So unlike yesterday, we'd expect to see the pit stops happen pretty much as the window opens. Unlike yesterday, we ran as long as we possibly could. Today, there'll be a different story. That was Brett Hobson getting kitted up down there to jump into the 96 Mercedes-Benz.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Knowles. We have races 1 and 3 where the AM drivers will start. Then typically, as soon as the pit window opens, the pro guy will get in. And for race 2, the pro guy will start and the pit window will open and the pro will run all the way to the end of the pit window. So effectively, you know, these guys, and no disrespect, I say that every time, the AM guys are not as fast as the pro guys, which is how they end up with their titles. And they're doing it for different reasons. So you're better to short runs for these guys, leave your pro guy in for as long as he can, and they're the ones that will be making the most amount of speed out of these cars at the minute. And that's part of the game. Everybody is wired and set up the same, and that's how we end up with this minimum pit stop time to try and balance out any speed discrepancy.
Garth Walden preparing on your screen down there. And watching these guys get prepared, you've done it in co-driver roles before at Bathurst, for example. Do you have a process? Do you have a way of doing things? Or do you want to get the helmet on nice and early? Do you want to distance yourself from anyone? How do you go about it?
I think it just comes down to individual driver and how they, you know, what works for them typically. But it's not so much about getting ready in the garage. You want to be ready, you know, nice and early in case something untoward happens or, you know, you get called upon quickly. The more difficult thing to talk about probably really, Carlsy, for everyone watching at home is that there's a difference in, you know, when you start the race, there's a normal cycle for race start. You get in the car in the paddock area and then you're in that flow. The hard bit is when you're in the garage and you're thrown into the car and the race is already through the cycle. The car's hot, you're jumping in. The pro guy's not so bad, but it's hard for the AM guys. So yeah, look, there's a couple of little bits of trickiness that happens here, but it's the same for everybody. Something just tickled your fancy.
It did.
Are you going to allude me to what that might be?
I'll come back to that one later.
I'm just wondering if I tripped over something there or not.
The gap has closed right up at the front. Shaheen was out to 2 seconds, but Liam Talbot is less than half a second away. With 23 minutes remaining through the heat haze. It's actually not warm out there today. There's a lot of humidity in the air. We had a quick shot across the Adelaide Hills, a lot of low-level cloud there, but it's quite humid out there. Just a whisker over 17 degrees at the moment here in the Adelaide CBD. Much hotter between these two on track at the moment.
So where this is really important compared to yesterday, and we tripped over our own feet during the pit stop sequence, so we've made sure that we're really across it today. So here is the first of the stoppers. This is Stupas. Where I was going with this is why that's important. The gap has come down there, Nolts, is that the Yasser Shaheen Porsche here, who is leading this race, he will have a shorter stop time than the Audi that's behind it and has Liam Talbot at the wheel. So Yasser actually had a little bit of a buffer there that could be eaten into, and at the end of the pit stop sequence, they will still come out in front. So, you know, it's Yasser the one that has a little bit to play with here, but it's Talbot that's trying to close that down.
Old Stokell about to jump in with that
I
familiar helmet.
That these two guys at the front of the field will be in this lap. Let's keep an eye on these guys. Let's see if they peel to the drivers right here as they come round to finish this lap.
Bang on, in they come. What's this pit lane like? I was meant to ask you yesterday. It's a really old school pit lane. It was built for Formula One back in the day. How do you approach it? You've really got to, because you're thinking about cars behind you at the same time.
You approach it by coming to that line and making sure that you're under 40 k's an hour. That's the first thing you need to do, that's for sure. But look, yes, it's an old school pit lane, but it's wider than most that we go to. Right. And you can see, you know, one thing with Fanatec GT World Challenge Australia is because we have these minimum pit stop times, you know, it takes a lot of the pressure out of the driver change, and that's what we can see here. It's nice and relaxed. Liam's got time to get his booster seat out, or his little insert out of the car. There's no rush. You can get the job done. Pull into your pit box. Because you are measured from pit entry to pit exit, it's not your stop time in the box. It takes all of that rush out of it. So we see Matt Campbell there, little fist bump from Yasser, and return serve from Matty inside the car. So he'll sit there now. He'll have a clock on his dash that will count down, and then he'll know how long roughly he'll need to take once he's released from his pit bay to get to the end of the pit lane. But no, plenty of space, Matty, and while it is old school, there has been some updates over the years to be able to make sure that we can have a category like this come compete and do it safely.
Spatsios leaves the lane in the Volante Rosso Motorsport Mercedes-Benz, and these two looking to take it right to the end. 3 seconds difference in their mandatory pit stop times. 87 seconds, the minimum stop that every car is awarded with. Now they play the waiting game to be released. So Matt Campbell is released, and so too is Mies. And they get out onto pit lane, VP Ultimate pit lane. And back into the race. Comes out just in front of Renee Gracie. In fact, tucks in behind the Audi going through the chicane. And the Shannon's insurance car comes out just in front of Brad Schumacher. Both these cars yet to pit. Gracie's, in fact, leading the race right now, but yet to pit with 11 in the books and just under 20 minutes of racing remain in this GT World Challenge final.
So in terms of Liam Talbot's opening stint, he just did everything he possibly could there, barring not giving up that position to Yasser. But we saw on the opening lap, Yasser looked aggressive, he made the move, he got the job done. Liam really needed to then bridge that gap and come in for the pit stop sequence right behind the Shaheen entry, so that Mies had the shortest gap possible to try and close down. And we saw him do this on Friday in the first race for the Fanatec GT World Challenge. The gap was around about similar to this, 3.5 seconds, and by the time we got to 2 minutes left in this race, Mies was all over the rear of Matty Campbell. Exactly. And if you're just watching these races for the first time, don't for a second that 3.5 seconds isn't doable in terms of closing down the gap from Chris Mies to Matty Campbell, because we have lap traffic that comes into play here, and it comes in every single lap, and some guys get through it and some don't, and it's a bit of a rubber band situation. You pull it out and then you know that it's going to snap back and get you on the fingers. It was relentless in both races, Friday and Saturday, but Matt Campbell, superstar Porsche driver, flown out to run with Yasser Shaheen and increase the chances of maybe winning back-to-back crowns. The best he can hope for now is second with the 75 J-Mech Audi out there now with Max Hoffer behind the wheel after Jeff Emery started the car. Remarked on Max Hoffer, who's been such a great addition to the series, a real likeable guy down in the pits, absolute superstar behind the wheel of a GT car globally. And now trying to hold the hopes of keeping Jeff Emery in second place overall as the Honduras boys swap over down in pit lane in the Superbarn Farmers Market entry. And look at what's even happened here between this gap, Knowles, between the race leader and the guy that will effectively be second once the pit stop cycle rolls through. So that 3.5 seconds that I was referencing was the gap that would have been there at the end of the pit stop sequence. That's already down to 1.5, 2 seconds, depending on where they are at any given time on the circuit. So Chris Mies has done a really good job on that out lap and the preceding lap after the pit stop sequence. So he's already bridging that gap. Now it's going to fluctuate as we go through the next 17 odd minutes. So Liam there, quite red-faced, shows that he's put in the effort. Ben Hennick there in the background, so he's been a long-time supporter of Liam's from Washington, Australia, and then you'll reference his wife Charlie in the background. She's more stressed than Liam is right now. She wears her heart on her sleeve, doesn't she, from within the pit lane whenever Liam is racing, and she doesn't mind showing her emotions either, which we like to see. Sees the extra 10 horsepower in that car sometimes when he's out there racing. Down into turn number 8. Just over 16.5 minutes remain as all but one car, Mark Senior, in fact, has been given a 5-second time penalty, which he has to add on to his original pit stop time to make that 92 seconds. And the Hallmark Audi is a beautiful shot through the corporate villas. And I can't recall, Andy Jones, on how beautiful this place looks this year. I haven't seen the place look better in the quarter of a century we've been coming here to the Adelaide 500. It was busy yesterday. The concert was absolutely packed here on the oval, on the infield, and Robbie Williams is in town ready for tonight's finale, and I'm sure as we build closer to the final race of the Velo Adelaide 500 today, this place will be pumping. Absolutely. Hats off to the event organisers, because the circuit has been presented beautifully this year. It's in immaculate condition, and you're right, we're just the event goes from strength to strength. It's always disappointing when we lost it for a couple of years, but to see it back on the supercars calendar and then bringing categories like this along for the ride and adding to the excitement levels of the event is great to see. You know, really, I'll say it should never have been lost, but there's a lot of politics at play, but that's all played out, and here we are, we're back racing, and we're very grateful for that. Common sense prevailed. That's what happened, Andy Jones. 2022 was reinstated by the Labor government and Peter Malinauskas. As we stay with the effective race leader with a couple of cars still to hit. This is the Juice squeezing as much as he can out of the
Valente Rosso Motorsport Mercedes-Benz, but being held up by the 111 of Axel Donaldson in the invitational class. There was the man that was leading, but serving an extra 5 seconds. Mark Cini holds the record for the most races in Porsche Carrera Cup Australia.
I don't think Ojeda tagged that tyre bundle there. I think he went as close as you're going to get to it. There was a little bit of dust that came up, but there wasn't a mark on the right rear. So
lucky.
Yeah, we call that lucky. Absolutely, we do.
Considering what we saw in S5000 just before with the crash up there was a couple of cars marking it yesterday. It really is a narrow section of the Adelaide street circuit. You're going downhill out of Wakefield into Flinders. It's sort of like a bowl coming out of there, isn't it?
And look at this gap here, Nolts. Christopher Mees has navigated his way through the traffic here. Matt Campbell has been held up massively. And so that gap that was 1.5, 2 seconds about a lap ago is now down to 0.3 of a second. So this is a cool little battle. This is what we want to see. We're happy with the minimum pit stop time and the requirements that are all there. They are the rules. Everyone knows it. They all sign up to play the game that is governed by that set of rules. But for us in the commentary box and for anybody that's sitting at home having your Vegemite toast and your coffee on a Sunday morning, what we want to see is 2 cars beautifully turned out like this with 2 pro guys driving them and absolutely duking it out on the streets of Adelaide. So this is super, super cool. I'm up out of my seat.
Yeah, this is going to be a good finish. And a long way to go still. 13.5 minutes, in fact, as we chalk up 15 laps in the race. So these two have been the form cars all weekend long. Porsche, Audi, EMA Motorsport taking on Melbourne Performance Centre. And coming up to the first of the lap cars now. The pit window not too far away from closing as well, but everybody's performed that now with Campbell, Mees, Hoffer. Gracie continues to lead in the AM class ahead of Schumacher, but that gap is only half a second. Paul Stokel runs in 6th position outright in 3rd in the AM class. Garth Walden is up into 7th. Theo Konduras 8th. Marcus Flack and Tom McLennan in the trophy class section. Those two battling that out there, but 11 seconds the margin between those two. They're 9th and 10th. Then Goodacre, Cini, Hobson, Darren Curry back in 14th. Hargraves and Ojeda. Man, it's been a quiet weekend for the Valente Rosso team after wrapping up the Radical Cup a couple of weeks back. But he and Chris Matsios have struggled, and that started with that really awkward shunt on, I think it was Friday morning.
It was, yeah, and he did a lot of damage to that car as well, so great job for them to repair it. Here's a cool little battle. We'll have a look at the replay here first of, that is Matt Campbell, Chris Mees in the Audi, up on the curb. It's a reasonably hard hit on that left rear there. So Campbell running narrow. And unfortunately for Mees, just in the aero, a bit of aero wash going on there, or he's a little bit wide trying to crack the throttle. And I was going to reference that gap had just extended out to about 1 second there, and Mees wasn't able to go with Campbell. I felt a little bit of the popping of the excitement balloon, unfortunately, but that'll be the reason for it.
Yeah.
Was Mees making contact with the wall on the run out of turn 6, unfortunately. So let's keep an eye on it. These guys are pushing. That tells the story. That will absolutely have put a bit of damage to that left rear of the Mees entry. Let's hope it doesn't slow it down, but the gap is stabilised at the moment. It's hovering around 0.9 to 1 second. So all that work that Christopher Mees had done navigating through the traffic has been undone with that little mistake.
So he's just going to call his jet for a moment. It's not the added stress that Liam Talbot needs right now. And they'll be keeping an eye on that left rear, particularly the tyre, because it was enough of a hit then to raise some concern. Matt Campbell comes up to a sea of traffic here at the final turn. Meantime, Brad Schumacher down the inside. That's for a class change down there in the turn 9 hairpin. So Schumacher goes up ahead of Gracie. And she'll fight on here. And this is confidence building for the trophy class champion this year. She's been here before in Super 2 and Carrera Cup. But this changeover to the Evo 2, building the confidence going into 2024.
Yeah, and to be able to run with the likes of Brad Schumacher, who has already wrapped up that championship, should really give her some confidence leading into next year, and even in her decision making to come and run that car this weekend ahead of looking to do that program for 2024. So what a great battle between Schumacher and Gracie there. Both of them doing a terrific job. Jaden Ojeda in the Mercedes at the front here with the indicator on. which can get a bit confusing sometimes. Doesn't mean, hey, go to the right, or I'm going to go right. And both those two guys are pros. Ojeda out of the way of Mies, so that allows him through, and that's brought that gap down a little bit as well. Unfortunately, Campbell lost out in that.
And just more and more traffic ahead. A couple of the marked cars and the invitational cars ahead. Marcini, that 5-second penalty, 13th position. We lapped everybody up to 8th position yesterday in race 2. And Mies, there's blue flags and the blue LED board flashing on the way down to the centre chicane. And he's been hung out to dry here in this one. Needs to clear these two. He'll be frustrated behind the wheel. That's cost him at least a second.
Yeah, that's massive for Mies, particularly because the Audi is so strong riding the curbs down at turn 1 and turn 2 when he was held up behind the invitational mark car entry. While they've got good aero, big huge front wing, big huge rear wing, they just don't make the same corner speed that the Audi does. So it cost him about half a second to 6/10. Let's have a look at it here. So Marcini, he's coming up to be lapped. Matty Campbell's able to carry all of his speed through there. Cini has seen him, and that hasn't hurt Campbell at all, but Mies in that Audi behind him, he's had to lift out of the throttle, play it safe, and that has cost him a lot of time. So this is what we alluded to early on, wasn't it? That just because they come out of the pit lane and there's that 3-second delta between the two at the front of the field doesn't mean it's going to stay that way, and it will seesaw in favour of either of these guys. But from Mies' end, Nolts, Talbot really in that entry, and Mies, who's the pro guy, just needs to finish second in this race. So there is a little bit of defence mode starting to come in here, and just doing what you need to from Christopher Mies. And my read on what we just saw there was risk management from Christopher Mies. Don't do anything crazy. I'm happy to give away a little bit of time because we do have a points buffer here to be able to wrap up the championship, and that's Christopher Mies' job this weekend. Come in, support Liam Talbot, and help him lift that trophy tonight.
As has been the case in all previous races this year, the final 10 minutes always starts to see some dramas here for exceeding track limits. We've got no less than 6 cars with warnings, including our race leader, Matt Campbell, coming down to turn number 8. So we need to be mindful of this. In fact, first and second have now been warned about exceeding the track limits down at turn 2. That's the centre chicane, and poor Marcini has got another 5 seconds for using the track limits down there. He'll be sick of seeing pit lane, one would think, today.
Yeah, and look, once those warnings are given from the pit lane into the cars with these two guys driving them particularly, you know, they are track limit warnings, as you refer to them. But from my history and when I would go racing, you know, the thing is we see them as credits, Nolt. So you're able to use them. They're there to be used, and once you get that warning, that's when you scale it back a bit. You don't want to finish this race looking for lap time or looking for speed, and you had track limit credits available to you that were unused. So it's all within the rules, it's all within the playbook, and these guys are doing exactly what they're meant to do.
What we don't know is how many times they've done it or when it's going to be punished. That's the beauty of this. In practice and qualifying, we usually get notified on the screen of how many times it's been tripped over, and that's the whole idea of practice, to test the limits on how far you can go down there, how close you can to touching the flames, and then back it off.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. So in practice, it's not abnormal to see these guys go through there, use too much curb, trigger the, you know, the warning system that we get, which will light up during practice. The team will then tell the drivers, hey, that was too much, you're over by, you know, 20 centimetres. Next time round, if you could just back that back a little bit, and they do. You know, that's why these guys are the pro end of world-class GT racing, because they have the ability to be able to do that, and that's their job. So you're right, we don't get a trigger warning count as such. They'll know what they're doing, and they'll just back that back, and for the next 5 minutes, I suspect we won't see any of them step over that mark.
A bit of a waiter here on the field, watching the gaps between the cars. There is Paul Stokel in 6th position outright, but a long way back from the race leaders who are on their way around to finish another lap. Garth Walden car coming through. That's Bartels Road that you're looking at. That was the middle section back in the Grand Prix days, one of the major arterials that bring you into Adelaide City. We rejoin the old circuit pretty much halfway down to Kettleville Terrace. But it is a long way downhill, but then you climb uphill to the sweeper, so minimal brake pressure needed down in this world.
Yeah, and that's a great shot. It does really visually show the fall in the track from there, because sometimes when we see the big long wide shot, it does look quite flat, but it's not at all. And you come out onto the Kettleful Terrace and it is very much a push down the hill, you know, a bit like a Hot Wheels track when you have it bolted up to the top of the table and you let a car go, it just blazes down there, and there's a bit of that feeling when you're inside the car.
This is the section
Every 10-year-old watching goes, yeah, I know what that's like.
10-year-old, try a 43-year-old. Up to the hairpin we go with 4.5 minutes remaining. So since at 1.5 seconds, Chris Mees has the fastest lap of the race, but that was, well, just the previous lap by. He's got 1:17.6 to stay with Matt Campbell. The second place car has got one hand and a couple of fingers on the Fanatec GT World Challenge Trophy. 4 minutes remain.
And that shot we just saw of the two leading cars coming through turns 1 and 2, that was the example that I was referring to before. Earlier on in the race, you would see them, they'd hit the turn 1 curb and they would basically straighten the steering wheel up and just bounce straight ahead over the turn 2 curb, and the left-hand side of the car was either on the line or inside the line. They were, you know, they were using everything available, whereas that time through, they were very much having to turn around the 2 curbs there and ensure that they weren't triggering any curb warnings.
Actually wasn't S-band, not
They're out of credits.
Yasser Shaheen, left-hand side, bottom of your screen, and Liam Talbot watching on. Fantastic series that's visited some of the great tracks in Australia. Shaheen wrapped the series up in 2022. He had Garnett Patterson join him this year, which was a great find. Garnett's a very underrated driver, I feel, in this country, and got his chance with the EMA team. Matt Campbell brought out for this final round of the series.
And if you can't win the championship, in the case of Yasser this weekend, then the next best thing you can do is win the event. And it looks like these guys are going to do that across the course of this weekend. Whoa, that was a close moment there for Matt Campbell as he navigated up to the rear of Marcus Flack's older spec generation Porsche. That would have been awkward. Matt Campbell, factory Porsche driver, coming up behind a slower, older spec Porsche.
And he's getting delayed here massively.
Christopher Mees encountering the same issue. So, yeah, look, ultimately, a problem here for Jayden Ojeda. And that car has been going slow during this race, not just at the hands of Jayden Ojeda at the wheels. So it's an interesting one going on there. No, it doesn't look like it's in limp mode. Looked to me more like the way it was porpoising along the road there, it was almost like either an electrical drama or out of fuel possibly, but a little bit of contact there.
That was the Ram Motorsport Mercedes-Benz with Garth Walden behind the wheel on the back of Axel Donaldson in the Mark II Mustang.
Small aero adjustment to the Mercedes there as well, taking off one of those fairings on the right-hand front
expensive aero
splitter.
adjustment. Yeah. So Campbell starting to shut the race down. The lap traffic has been helping the Ben Motorsport Park EMA Porsche today. Christopher Mees still runs second, and a big margin back to Maxi Hoffa in the JMEC Audi that Jeff Emery looks good to finish second in this year's series. Brent Schumacher fourth has broken away from Rene Gracie, who still runs in second in the AM class. There's 8 seconds back to Paul Stokel, so a couple of podiums in her first weekend in AM class. Will be a good way to wrap up 2023 for Gracie.
Yeah, no doubt that will absolutely help her in her decision-making as to whether or not continuing her progression within this category and moving up a class for 2024 is the right thing to do. You would have to say off the back of this weekend, then yes, absolutely, it is the right thing to do. So we pick up Matt Campbell here. He's done a stellar job, as you would expect. Chris Mees, likewise, very professional. These guys can get flown all around the world. They get dropped into different teams anywhere in any given championship. They're very familiar with working with different people, different AM drivers, and this is the job that they're employed to do, and they are absolutely delivering here this weekend.
Looking down to the chicane, 2 Mercedes-Benz ahead. And Campbell catches him right in that little short chute, heading up to Wakefield Street. He'll clear one. It'll be boxed in between the two of them on the way. Or not. Well done. to Bailey, to Brett Hobson, who's now behind the wheel of the 96, and had to cover off the Honduras one behind because they're battling for position here in 8th and 9th spot. Different classes, but certainly for an outright finish.
And this is tricky stuff here, Nolson. That was an awkward moment there for me. He's trying to navigate his way around Honduras because sometimes, you know, if you see the car coming up behind you too late and they think that you're going to make the apex and you pull wide and they're going wide, that's where you trip over each other. And that was I was concerned watching that, to be honest. My read on it, I thought they were going to make contact. So very, very good job from Mies. Just needs to get it home here. Doesn't need to do anything silly, and that gap is extending to Matt Campbell up ahead. But Mies, he knows his job. He'll be delivering on that. He is delivering on that.
Paul Lucchini does the right thing and gives the guy some space out of the final turn. And we start the last lap of the weekend, the last lap of the series. Sam Shaheen on the right-hand side. We'll see him later on today in Porsche Carrera Cup. The brainchild of the Bend Motorsport Park, which is just continuing to evolve up there at Tailem Bend. Every time you go back, they've done something different. The new dragway that's opened only in the last couple of months. They were packed out on the first weekend there, and some massive events to come up in 2024 there at the Bend Motorsport Park.
And I don't know Yasser very well, but Sam is always one. I've always found him to stop, chat to you, and at the core of everything they do, particularly within this sport and this category, they just love motorsport,
yes,
don't they? And they're always trying to do the right thing by the sport as a whole within the country. So, you know, I always enjoy my discussions with Sam. Likewise, Liam, he's another one that has done massive amounts of racing around the world globally within GT racing over a long period of time, and there's some discussions from within the paddock at the moment that he's possibly looking to go back overseas and do some GT racing as a bronze classified FIA driver. He's quite sought after. So this will be a lot to play out over the Christmas break.
What a victory it's going to be for the Porsche. He'll win the final race. Both he and Yasser Shaheen and Liam Talbot will cross the line with Christopher Mies behind the wheel to win the series. He drops away down the field. Here he comes. I was just panicking for a moment. He dropped right away. And in fact, has finished back behind in 3rd position, but it's enough to win the series. And he helps out his Melbourne Performance teammate to secure 2nd in the Fanatec GT World Challenge. Nice gesture and well done to the Shannon's Insurance team. Jeff Emery in the background of the shot as well, 2nd place to add to his championship a couple of years back, in the list of Commodore Cup national titles he had back in the day. And Liam Talbot, great guy. Big hugs from the Melbourne Performance Centre team. We'll have Charlie on the right-hand side as well. Great result. High-pressure motor racing all weekend long in Fanatec GT World Challenge.
Yeah, and it was really cool to see some emotion happening there from the Melbourne Performance Centre guys, because unfortunately sometimes within motorsport across the course of the season, you know, your decision-making is very unemotionally based, and you suppress a lot of that. And it's great to see once they wrap up that championship, there's a couple of little teary eyes going on there, so it shows how much that means to that group. Well done to everybody.
Shaheen and Campbell win the battle, but Liam Talbot wins the war in 2023. They'll finish 3rd behind the J-Mac Audi. At the end, Brad Schumacher finishes 4th and wins the AM class, with Gracie 2nd, and Stokel and Stupas coming home 3rd. So all tightly bunched there in the top 5. And the drivers down to an invitational class. But the mystery for me was the Valente Rosso car that was pretty much off the pace all weekend long. They're the only DNF in the Fanatec GT World Challenge Australia. Congratulations, Liam Talbot, the 2023 Fanatec GT World Challenge champion here on the streets of Adelaide. Mega season for him as we build up to Armour All qualifying, where the story so far has been about our champion-elect, Brodie Kostecki.
This is going to be right